vacuum pump. And this line goes, it'll focus. There you go. Vacuum pump, turned by the camshaft, creates vacuum to this hose. This is a supply hose. So these two little fittings right here, this one's capped off and this one goes to another hose back there, which we'll do another day. But these are vacuum supply. So now we come over here, and that's a vacuum actuator, solenoid, whatever you want to call it, for this valve down here. Normally the vacuum line's red, but as you can see here, it's literally pretty stiff. So we're gonna replace them all and show you how to do it. So if you've ever tried to do the vacuum lines, you can tell that the OEM diagram kind of sucks. Everything's all spread out and spaced out. These little tracer lines, you can highlight it and it makes it a little bit better, but it's still very confusing to someone who's never done it before. So I'm going to break it down and then maybe even make an extra diagram for you guys to see and use, because this is actually a pretty crucial part of this car. We're going to be using silicone hose. This is, I believe, 3mm inner diameter or 1/8 inch inner diameter. I'm mostly going to be using the black one because I got more of that. You can use any color as long as it's a, I would say, fairly thick wall and it can hold up to the vacuum. This is after valve cover. Figured I'd make a video so you guys can see what's going on. So we're going to start at this hose here, which is this one here. And that runs all the way back to that actuator that I showed you in the beginning. So we're going to start by running this hose down. Then we have all this hose, which is perfect, so we can kind of route it however we need to, and then we'll use the extra hose to proceed. Now that it's kind of routed, don't forget your heat shield deal, and then leave yourself enough slack to make sure it's routed nice. Unfortunately, it's not really going to fit in these clips. It might, but we're going to leave it in there for now. Route it this way towards the back. And then we have the vacuum reservoir pulled off, but it's going to go to this outer nipple right here. And then you leave yourself enough room so you don't have to run an extra splice, and you just kind of cut and line it up right there. Okay, now that this one's done, let's run the other one. It's a little short hose that goes to a T. This kind of T right here. The ones you get at like an O'Reilly's or auto parts store, little white plastic ones, they're slightly either undersized or oversized, so they don't fit as good. This is the factory one, and you can order these also from the dealer or online parts supplier as well. And that runs right here, which this tees to this vacuum actuator, the reservoir, and from the reservoir you get supply from this vacuum supply. So the reservoir is this piece right here. You can see the two nipples that we're gonna tee into. And since we're limited on, well, I'm limited on how much other color hose I can use, I have this much red, so since it's a relatively short section, that's what we're gonna use, and that goes from the back of that actuator. So we're gonna run it back right here. This X5's lifted, so it's kind of tough to get back there. But once that's slid on, I would leave all this excess hose until we get the reservoir installed, then we know how much we need to trim. This is the mounting bracket for your vacuum converters, and then the reservoir goes over it. Kind of, since this is the back, it sits right here over these threaded inserts or threaded studs. It's just easier to install it piece by piece once we get up there. And you can see how tight everything is over here, so we don't have a lot of room. We'll break it down for you. And when you go back together, do not forget this connector. Pretty important. And that's this one right here. It's on this harness coming out of the ECU box. It's up to you if you want to plug it in now and then deal with all these wires after, or plug that one in separately on its own. And then here's the fitting or the nipple for the turbo changeover, which is this rod right here, kind of in the center of the screen. This is how that pressure converter bracket sits. It's 3 10s usually on top and then 2 on the bottom. It is up to you if you want to run those. I do recommend putting all the screws back. It's not always easy. If not, it's one in the back right there, one right here, and one in the front at least. Get those. So if we're looking at the diagram, the rear pointing, which is the red line that we ran, goes to this T, which runs to the right port of the rear converter, and then it goes into the vacuum reservoir as well. So to make it easy, we're gonna run it straight to this reservoir with a little bit of slack. Now that it's cut to the length, routed, we're running it to this left port. Make sure there's no kinks, no bends, like nothing, no pinches. This is pretty good. And then we're gonna want to tee off somewhere here close by. Now that it's cut, coming off the rear of the actuator back there that we mentioned earlier, we're gonna tee off right here and then connect it to the other line that we cut here. And then out of the bottom of the T, we will go into this one right here. You can see, here's the T. So this is all supply. So we're supplying the module back there, that little converter, or the actuator that we mentioned earlier. And then we're gonna supply this converter with this T right here. Now we're spliced into that. We're gonna go into this T right here. So now this circuit's done. From the converter back there, once again, to this T. T's off into the rear converter, and then into the vacuum reservoir. Now going off the diagram, we have to supply this reservoir, which means we got to run a line from the reservoir to this vacuum pipe right here. And it doesn't really matter which port, because it's just vacuum source from the vacuum pump. So when you get the vacuum line on this vacuum supply, give yourself enough room and enough slack to not pinch the hose when you put the intake manifold back on. So we're gonna run this down. And then just give yourself enough room, but not too much, not too little. And we're gonna route it the right way here shortly. All right, once it's routed good enough, then you kind of measure how much hose you need. Eyeball it about right there. Now the vacuum pump is supplied with vacuum, so when it's running, this will pull vacuum, so that's good. So we have this hose. We still have the output for the rear converter, which goes to this actuator down here. And then we're tight on space back there, so we're gonna stick with this small red hose, and we're gonna finish it off right here. So that's routed there to that actuator down there, and then runs through the mounting, and you just kind of loop it over like this, and then onto the empty port right there. All right, now we're done with the rear. We just gotta plumb in this front one. And then there's another vacuum line down there, which people often forget about. This one right here. So now all that we have left is to supply this actuator and then get the output to that vacuum line right there. So we're sticking with the theme. Output is on the left when you're looking at the front of the car. So we're gonna plumb in to the left right there. There you go. Plumbed in. Run it over the front. Down here. And then this runs down to there and we trim it to fit. All right, all of our outputs are ran. We have one more supply to run. So this supply fitting right here, we're gonna run from this middle fitting here. All right, after that, that's ran. These are run. To make sure that when you put your intake manifold back on, you don't pinch the vacuum lines under the manifold. Right here as well. And then when you put the air cover on, air box cover on, make sure not to pinch it on these mounts either. So it's pretty close here, so you might have to move them over a little bit. And there you go. It will show you once I get this put back together as well.